Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Today I'm joined by Dan Olinger, a beat writer for the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast covering the Philadelphia 76ers. And we're going to talk some adjustments and the key battlegrounds heading into Game 6.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Game off, we got to talk more about Monopoly Go. The fast-paced game lets you team with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go, now free on the Google Play or App Store. Game on. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. We are now available on all platforms. That includes on YouTube. So if you want to be an everyday or sometimes twice a day or throughout the playoffs, and this might be one of those days, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, hit that notifications bell to ensure you never miss an episode. I'm Gavin Schall. I've been covering the NBA for right around a decade now. I'm super excited for the first time ever on this podcast to talk to Dan Olinger, who is a beat writer covering the Philadelphia 76ers for the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast, one of the great team pods out there. If you could stomach it, they do great work covering the Sixers. Let's get into it without further ado with Dan right now. All right, guys, as promised, lucky enough to be joined by Dan Olinger, the Sixers beat reporter for the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast, a legendary podcast, one that I've really, really enjoyed after Knicks wins and hate listened to after Knicks losses. But Dan, on the writing side of things, welcome to the show, man. I thought this would be a good time to bring you on because we're kind of getting a little tired of just hearing things from a Knicks perspective, and I wanted to know how Philly's sitting. Probably pretty good after that Game 5.
Yeah, I mean, like, everyone, it's the most tired joke in the world, but the "it's so over, we're so back" meme, like, just going through all the emotions of that through the last few games if you're a Philly fan. And yeah, like, I think I posted it the other day. This is up there with 2015 Spurs Clippers and 2009 Celtics Bulls as maybe the best first round series ever. Like, I think that's one thing everyone can agree on. It's like, this is about as good as a first round series can ever get. So yeah, it's a pretty wild ride.
Yeah, it's both like incredibly exciting to watch, but also just torture in the sense that I feel like you're getting all the stress of a final series and the reward is either the Indiana Pacers or the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round and not a championship. So you don't necessarily get that payoff. The Knicks could have just let DeMar DeRozan get a layup at the end of that game and maybe had a cushy series against the Pacers. They decided not to go that way. Didn't seem like they were going to pay for it. And then 28 seconds of Tyrese Maxey later. And here we are heading into Game 6. So let's just start as broad as possible. Do you feel like the Sixers win the series at this point? Because I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but it does feel like there was just like Tibbs, for better or worse, and ended up being for worse. He went for it in that Game 5. Like, he played Brunson, Anunoby 50 minutes. He played Josh Hart 53 minutes. It was 54 minutes. He played every single minute. And it feels like the Sixers not only have momentum, but maybe a little bit more left in the tank than the Knicks at this point.
I mean, it's tough. Like, it's I think I just had a piece published like 30 minutes ago, even where one of my description was when I was going through Game 5 is the Sixers really didn't figure anything out more than they just, I said it was their version of what the Knicks did in their 3 wins, where it's an extremely close game and all the breaks that you need to go your way went their way so they could pull out the win. They didn't really figure anything out. Like, it wasn't Game 3. They kind of, those empty side pick and rolls, they kind of figured out something with the Knicks a little bit, and the Knicks adjusted and fixed that by Game 4. But there wasn't anything in Game 5 the Sixers did where I'm like, oh man, the Knicks have no answer for this. It's like, no, the Sixers made a lot of big plays. Tyrese Maxey lost his mind and they ended up winning the game. Like, I don't know, as great as Maxey is, I don't know if you want to Maxey losing his mind is like a repeatable strategy every single game. So, but like it's like, that's the not comforting thing if you're from the Sixers perspective, but also it's the thing where these teams are so close. Every game feels like a coin flip. And while the Knicks, that's the good thing, is you only have to win one of those 2 coin flips. Like, the Sixers winning 2 coin flips is not that improbable either. They can get 2 coin flip games to go their way. So, I mean, just like based on like a pure probability standpoint, the Knicks probably should be favored just because it's, again, they would in theory have Game 7 at home in the Garden. Like, it's still be a really hard road win for the Sixers in a raucous environment. But then you also factor in the pressure the Knicks could be facing if they've lost those first 2 games leading up to that. and also just the fact the Sixers now prove they can win there. Just like it's probably still like in most worlds that exist, the Knicks probably still win the series, but like obviously like the Sixers have a very real chance to do this too.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same place. And coming out of game 5, I was or game 4, sorry, I was cautioning people and saying I don't think this series is quite over. What I draw comfort from is the fact that like all 3 of these games are likely to be very close, and the Sixers have to do that 3 times in a row. But it feels like they already got the Black Swan event, as Bill Simmons has been saying on every podcast recently. And now somehow that's in my vernacular, unfortunately. But they got the Black Swan event. The Knicks had their Black Swan event in game 2. Usually there's only at most, there's one of those a series. There might only be one of those once every 10 years or so. But there's been 2, and each team's gotten one. And now I just look at the load that's been on the Knicks, right? Jalen Brunson at 44 minutes a game, 30 shots a game, 30 or so drives a game, even if not all those drives are as taxing as that number would indicate. Josh Hart playing 46.5 minutes per game, needs to cover up every single gap on defense, needs to facilitate on offense, needs to rebound like a lunatic, which we'll talk about in a sec. Finally faltered a little bit for the Knicks. Anunoby at 41 minutes now is the clear-cut second option. And has to contain 2 of the best scorers on earth, not by himself, but plays a role in doing so nearly every single possession. And that it's just a lot to ask of these guys. And I wonder if we hit a point of no return where it could be the Knicks, it could even be the Sixers who falter. One of these teams just steps down a little bit because the level of play outside of Joel Embiid turning it over a million times last game has just been so high from these teams. But you just started to see some of those mental mistakes and the fatigue creeping in that sense. I wonder if it starts to hit from a physical side, and we can get more into this. I wonder if Bojan Bogdanovic, even though he's only scored 24 points in this series, is what ultimately costs the Knicks here, or if they get through this, maybe in the next round where they just don't have enough guys in it anymore, and they just don't have enough creation anymore. But where those themes loom the largest in game 5, and where there was a distinct shift in game 5 was certainly the rebounding battle, where the Knicks came in with that absurd 40% offensive rebounding rate, 11% better than their league best total in the regular season. And last night, the Sixers come in, only give up 6 offensive rebounds, get 12 of their own. In watching this live, presumably in rewatching this, Dan, how did the Sixers tilt that? Was it as simple as better effort, more focus, or was there something a little more there? All right, guys, we'll be back with Dan in just a sec to continue talking some key battlegrounds, including the rebounding battle between the 2 teams. So we'll get into that next on Locked On Knicks. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to tip-off. And guys, I only live 14 blocks away from MSG. I know I'm pretty lucky. But on top of being lucky, you need a little more to get into the Garden unless you're making, I don't know, $1 billion a year. Well, Game Time can do that for you because they have the cheapest tickets available. Priority last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater, etc. That's a big deal for me because I'm walking distance. So let's just say there is a Game 7 or there's a Game 1 against the Pacers or the Bucks. I can make the decision last second, or I don't know, in the middle of the second quarter, go and enjoy the game to my heart's content. They also offer flash deals where you save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Zone deals, you save even more on a section, and like Game Time, choose the seats. And they show all-in prices. This might be my single favorite feature. You toggle this feature to show the total up front, so there are no surprise fees at checkout, and you can tell the group chat what you are actually going to need. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Yeah, so it's hard. And like I think I'll get to the rebounding, but I do want to touch on like you're obviously, like you said, the Knicks, the minutes loads for like guys like Josh Hart and the effort they play for absurd. And you can definitely see, as well conditioned as they are, of how intense playoff basketball is, that start to wear on them a bit. It is also worth noting the Sixers are similarly like at their limit in the sense, again, it's you almost wonder how does this affect who plays in the Pacers Bucks the next round, because both these teams are just trying to kill each other right now of how hard they're playing. Like you see, like the Sixers only ended up playing 8 guys, and like Paul Reed is in there for 4 minutes. Like the campaign was out of the series, so the series now he's like very crucial to them, their survival. They're just, it's the thing in the playoff series where as the series goes along, you just figure out more and more guys who can't play or can't play that much, and you have to take them out. And as you see, like Joel Embiid has one knee, one like side of his face that isn't paralyzed and has dealing with migraines. Again, I joked today, like it's like in a Pokemon game, he just picks up a random status affliction, like, oh, Joel Embiid is poisoned. Like just randomly during the middle of the game. This is kind of what they're dealing with. So it's all kinds of things going on. As far as the rebounding goes, like, yeah, some of it is just like being more attentive. For as bad as Embiid was on offense yesterday, his defense and his rebounding was pretty good. I think he did make a clear attention, especially as the game got later on, like as Maxey was going to be their offense. Embiid tried to focus in on defensive rebounding because he knew that's where he could contribute to try and end the game. Batum, it was the huge play when the Sixers were up 1 in overtime where Batum outmuscled Josh Hart for an offensive rebound and kicked it out, and Embiid got that and1 over Deuce McBride. It was probably the first time like all series that someone on the Sixers had outmuscled Josh Hart for a rebound. Like it just had not happened in 4 games. So a lot of it was just the Sixers being more attentive, being more disciplined towards that. Some of the lineups are interesting because obviously Precious doesn't see the floor in game 5 after plays a big role in game 4, and be curious to see if we see that OG Anunoby on Embiid, Precious on Oubre strategy again in game 6. I'm guessing Tibbs didn't go to that, given that it was mainly a strategy to stop Embiid in game 4, and they were having no problem stopping Embiid's offense in game 5 already, so he didn't really bust it out there. But just rebounding wise, with how the Sixers were able to finally play their lineup of Maxey, Embiid, and then their 3 forwards in Oubre, Tobias, and Nico Batum. Usually they couldn't play that lineup because Tobias had been so bad through the first 4 games of the series. It just wasn't tenable with Tobias. They finally got a good game from Tobias where suddenly that lineup looks potent enough on both ends of the floor. And suddenly it's, oh yeah, the Sixers have 3 dudes who are 6'7" and up, along with Joel Embiid. And now they actually look like a team that can rebound. Like, as amazing as Lowry is, and he's a really good player, really smart player, probably going to make the Hall of Fame one day, even though he's old and washed up. Like, Kyle Lowry's barely taller than me. Like, he is not a big guy, and that gives the Knicks, who are a very athletic team, a very aggressive team, a good chance to get all these rebounds. So the Sixers can find a way to keep that bigger lineup out there. If the Knicks don't go back to that Precious OG lineup that kind of threw the Sixers off a bit, it just gives the Sixers a better chance out there. But again, it all depends on the whole reason they didn't go to those lineups is that Tobias looked unplayable for a lot, and Batum's threes weren't falling. It's all these little factors that depend on each other. It's all like both teams have these giant like Jenga towers, and just if one piece gets pulled out wrong, everything's going to fall down.
No, it's a great analogy, and this is a gross oversimplification, but where my concern looms is like it just feels like, all right, that the Sixers at the end of the day have 2 stars to go to, and the Knicks have 1 star to go to, and as incredible as Maxey was in that game, and he was undeniably the best player on the floor down the stretch. He at least gets those breaks of like, oh, he's going to get 4 pretty good looking spot up threes a game, and Jalen Brunson had 1 off a give and go with Deuce McBride, where he still had to do work to kind of create the initial opening for it. And that was almost the first one I can remember him getting all series. I'm sure Josh Hart hit him for another one at some point. And it just feels like for the Knicks to win and to make up for that gap, and this has been the battle all series, like the Knicks tertiary guys have to dramatically outplay the Sixers tertiary guys. And you could make the case for 47.5 minutes they did last night, like the way Anunoby stepped up with 35 points these last 2 games. Like combined, I should say. I think the Knicks need to lean even further into that, even if it takes a little bit of his energy away defensively, especially when Philly's going to put Tyrese Maxey on him. And it just, my buddy Benji Ritholtz did a great job pointing this out in his film breakdown of the game. But there were times where Brunson was just taking on creation duty beyond what was necessary, and he was trying to go at Nico Batum when OG had Maxey on him. And at a certain point, you have to say, all right, that should be an automatic double if Anunoby's able to get Maxey on him, or really, and Maxey's played great defense on Brunson this series, but if he's on someone else and you have a size advantage, it's something they have to go at. And the Knicks just desperately need Dante DiVincenzo to have a good game. Was excellent on both ends in game 2. Outside of that, has kind of been what he's always been in the playoffs, which is someone for whatever reason underperforms the really good player is in the regular season. And this year he had another level in the regular season, and unfortunately that leap has not been proportionate in the playoffs. They just need more guys who can create a shot. And right now it's hard in transition. It's Anunoby on a mismatch, and DiVincenzo, who just feels like he's a little rushed in everything he's doing. has to be added to that list. But I guess circling back on the rebounding thing, do you think the Sixers continue to lean that direction with Kyle Lowry after a great game one and to use a rights to Ricky Sanchez term of some tremendous grifting all throughout this series? Does he continue to have a little bit more of a relegated role, and do they keep leaning into Oubre, who's been playing much better, Harris, who had the game of his series by far, and Batum, who is just such a good option on Brunson? All right, guys, we're going to be back with Dan one final time to talk about the coaching battle between Tom Thibodeau and Nick Nurse and how it's been defined by their respective strengths and weaknesses, but also by the personnel they have available to them. That next on Locked On Knicks. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there is so much more good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timeouts, where you work together to build each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much more to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges, a ton including their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot Panchico machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
Yeah, between like Brunson, Kyle Lowry, and Joel Embiid, it's the Grift Olympics and like the series, and on top of everything else, just get Norm Powell in here and we'll have it all set. But it's hard because Nurse he likes to feel each game differently. He has closed with different lineups in multiple games now. Really, the only three guys who are locked in were obviously Maxey and Embiid, and surprisingly Kelly Oubre, because they so desperately need Kelly's ability to get downhill and score that he just, like, Batum and Lowry are really great players. They're such smart players, but neither is really looking for their own shot ever. Like, the Knicks have gotten away with putting Brunson on Batum several times because as great as Batum is, are they going to throw Nico Batum the ball in the post and he's going to score on Brunson? No, it's like he's ultimately fine if he's there, and it basically, like, if you're the Sixers, you're worried about, are you building in a hiding spot for Jalen Brunson where you do not want to you want to make him work on defense. You do not want to give him time off on defense under any circumstance. So that is like one thing. It'll all depend on, is Tobias playing well, or is Batum not looking for a shot at all and the Knicks are completely getting away with guarding him? Is Lowry like really mucking up the Knicks offense with some of his off-ball rotations and on offense, like getting stuff going? It's just going to be between those two of those three of Lowry, Batum, and Tobias. Just which two does Nurse think has it going, he will close with. And if they're doing fine on the boards like they were before in games 2 and 3 before they lost it in game 4, then I think he might keep that lineup. But if it's hard to tell, again, it's just all going to be a reaction to what happens in the game. And yeah, as much as I think that said the thing you said about OG, I did notice this in game 4. There was definitely, after that game 3 loss, I feel like there's a guarantee Tibbs told him you got to be more aggressive, because he started driving at everyone, especially Tobias. It was a little bit of an imperative, like, listen, we can't have you just kind of be near the same on offense as Tobias Harris. Like, you have to go at him. And like in game 3, he was destroying him. Like, he just could not keep him in front of him. All his drives left and right. And it's not like Tobias destroyed OG in game 5, but the fact is that the fact that Tobias could fight back a little bit was different, because that evens things out a little bit. And like you said, it's the thing where I've been on so many shows and I've talked to so many Knicks people at this point where I've said, obviously Brunson now is gone significantly up after those first 2 games where he wasn't very good. He's been stellar the last 3 games, but it was so frustrating when the Sixers were down 2-0, because it felt like in games 1 and 2 that the 2 best players on the court had been Embiid and Maxey. But then the next 8 best players were all Knicks. That it was just like, man, this really is 2 guys versus a team that is beating them. But in those games the Sixers have won, it has felt more like, yeah, maybe not even, the Knicks still have the better role players. They're still doing better, but they're only like slightly outplaying some of these Sixers guys. They are not like destroying them. You know, Oubre still gets some of his. Tobias hits some shots. Batum hits some threes. Just Campaign hits 2 big threes. Just little things like that where you can ease the load off Maxey and Embiid, who are asked to be the superstars that they are. It makes life so much easier. And like you said, one of the great things that it was frustrating for Sixers fans in that first half of Game 5 where Embiid just would get doubled on every possession, kick it out, and then the Sixers would swing it around and miss an open corner three. It just felt like, man, this is the story of the series. Like, no, Embiid can get doubled, and the Knicks can get away with it. But then the Sixers try to double Brunson. He finds an open Deuce McBride. He finds an open Josh Hart, and they score. They make the Sixers like feel pain for having to double Brunson. So it's just like, how are we ever going to get away with this? But finally, when Maxey starts to cash in on some of those doubles from Embiid, it just makes his life so much easier. And it's that kind of push and pull. So yeah, again, it's like there are so many different factors playing off of each other and all these little individual matchups of who can keep who down and which role players will step up for which stars and in which ways. So it's pretty fascinating.
All right, guys, Dan and I had such a good time that we ended up talking for a while in terms of Game 6 adjustments. So we're going to leave this episode off here, and we'll put out part 2 in a couple hours. But until then, great as always checking in with you guys. Hopefully we have something to celebrate tonight. This has been Locked On Knicks. Peace out.